is a gwini cór. Yn gydal sias is min la mawigas a gwala satan firkin fwrcha darish y froim, agos is ta ohas aram, mar lyfr cnws soc velodus erin laut liv tronona. Agos is min la macgord gas a gwala locht egra hon Symposium, a sagt na par sam tocti si múla on babel acadú le waia le gele, guna gwydthechar a rhaid. Agus is min na magwica sa leagwa leis an talib rinach I ogain, stjúrhórun knúsig, a will blianta fada katja ki e kartrada shun velitis neherin kun kien. President and dear friends, at home and abroad, it's a very great pleasure to join you this afternoon, as I know you are concluding the symposium convened by the National Folklore Collection on the role of archive in recording, conserving, disseminating folklore and tradition. And I am very happy this afternoon to have an occasion to acknowledge the significance of our National Folklore Collection and to praise the great work carried out by Professor Rinach Iogain and her team. It is for me an honour to be patron of such a wonderful cultural repository. And I very much want to say what a pleasure it is also to salute our guests from Estonia, Finland, Iceland, the Netherlands, Norway and Sweden, all countries that have very well established traditional archives. Indeed, I recall 20 years ago when I was Minister for Arts, Culture and the Gaelic, visiting Uppsala at the invitation of, I think it was then Seamus O'Coin. I have no doubt that all of the attendees in today's symposium will go home having greatly benefited from the exchanges of expertise and experience and advice with other scholars in the field. Now, the collection of folklore in Ireland, it's associated with the Gaelic revival, a movement which at the turn of the last century produced indeed notable writer folklorists such as Lady Gregory, Douglas Hyde, John Milton Synge. And then the scientific recording of folk beliefs was institutionalised in the Irish Free State as it then was, by the formation first of all of the Folklore of Ireland Society in 1926, then the Irish Folklore Institute in 1930, and finally the Irish Folklore Commission, established in 1935 under the government of Eamon de Valera. And may I say as well, what a privilege as to be Morug Throne Herin, when I look back at some of my predecessors, for example, Douglas Tahida, who before he became president and took up residence in Orsanukron in 1938, had to make such a stand for the Irish language. In a famous dispute with Professor Mahaffey, for example, and others from another institution. And I think, when I think of it as well, and also the great interest, not only in the Institute for Advanced Studies, the great interest that others of my predecessors, such as Eamon de Valera, took. And they were right in stressing the importance of what we inherited. And Tyrach the Tarkin, o near one o hif litric, o hif kilda, o go hif mother letahi, cosmointer gnomointer neherin. The now current National Folklore Collection, of which UCD is a custodian on behalf of the Irish people, was, as you have just said, Professor, inherited in the 1970s from the Irish Folklore Commission. And over the decades, collectors have recorded vast amounts of data from the length and breadth of Ireland in both Irish and in English. And it is very moving to me to see the beautiful records and transcriptions and translations in the Irish language, in the Sean Clough, for example, and the beautiful importance of this. It is one of the great riches which UCD has to have this. It's unique. And as president, I'm very, very honoured to have been asked to be patron. The collection contained millions of pages in manuscript form, in all inheritors in their time of the headline copybooks, and indeed the great care that was taken in the formation of a letter. Today the collection contains millions of pages in manuscript form, that is some samples of which I've just seen, tens of thousands of those early photographs, and the voices of about 100,000 contributors including over 10,000 hours of sound recordings and 1,000 hours of video material. Indeed, talking to your sound archivist, I was looking, there are some cylinders, I think, in Ors and Uachtaráin that were used by President de Valera, which I intend to look for to see if they can, in fact, now that the equipment is better, quite a way, we might have another go. But the preservation, expansion and dissemination amongst the public of a wealth of material like this entails great challenges, which are at once of a technical, financial and substantive kind. And I know that you've examined those challenges in the discussions you've had. I looked at the topics you're discussing. So I just want to make a few remarks on why it is that the Traditional Archive is of such crucial importance to us as a community. The archive performs an essential function, I suggest, in ensuring access to our forebears' intensity of vision and imagination, and to the diversity of their beliefs and practices and their extraordinary inventiveness. And the imagination that they had. It enables us to approach that unique combination between the particular and the universal, indeed, as you said, Professor, that is characteristic of vernacular culture. And I think, really, my hope as well is that contemporary circumstances will not be an obstacle in any sense to the preservation and dissemination of this work. I'm very conscious that at times the worst of the contemporary suggestion in relation to culture is that we're living in a kind of timelessness that is in fact quite dangerous, that if you lose your place in time, lose your place in context, and you'll be unable to place yourself in the world. From the native County Clare, where I'm from, it was the practice in people very often. And later, when I moved further west to Connemara, or moved to Galway City, the greatest advantage was on Fargon and Auron, a person without a song, a person without a story. But the people, it is one of the important aspects of Irishness, that people have an interest in Scéalach, in telling a story, of being able to stop the work to hear a good story told, or a good song rendered, or a piece of music. And in all the tribulations we've had in recent times, it is never from that source that we've any difficulty. Our reputation soars from that particular base. And it's an important corrective, I think, sometimes, to our contemporary thinking. Folk traditions and vernacular forms of knowledge in general, they are, of course, local. That they are, as Eni put it, the world is contained in a tiny incident. And they're typically passed on informally within one-to-one or a small group communication through performance, initiation, or by example. The infinite variety of tunes and stories and songs recorded in the National Folklore collection reflects the diversity of place and context, as well as the infinite possibilities of the human imagination, whether it is the creativity of a musician, a storyteller, a singer within a given pattern. All those traditions and cultural expressions that have preceded us give an essential quality of depth to our identity and belonging today. It is very interesting that when I was looking in my other life as an academic at migration and immigration, and looking at, for example, music and song traditions in the United States, in the cities of Chicago and Boston, whereas people had a style of playing a particular tune from a particular parish. It was when they're all thrown together in the city of the United States that a certain kind of competition then emerges between the rendering of a piece that they held in common. This is the importance of all of that. And then to every significant poet, in whatever language they're writing, whether they are writing in Irish, and I deeply regret sometimes my own inability to access Middle Irish and what was there in the very earliest Irish. I have to say I regard it as a disadvantage. But those who are from Ireland writing in the English language, the best have one thing in common, and that is their great respect for myth and for the myths that are universal and from which they can be drawn and give great power to poem. This is true whether one is speaking in the near contemporary period of Seamus Heaney or Michael Longley or others. But I think that this is universal. Myths, symbols, rites of passage, festivals have a universal, and as I have been saying, civilizational dimension that it has been emphasized by scholars such as Arnold van Gennep, James George Fraser, or Georges Dumézil. And all of you are well aware of how these ancient Irish myths and legends, those great cycles and tales of seafaring, are connected to broader European and Indo-European patterns. It is that enabled us to share a world of the imagination that wasn't divided by needless conflicts of one period of time. And it's a reflection of the movement and interaction of our peoples across continents and over centuries. And it also, and very importantly, points to the fundamental commonalities that underpin our shared humanity, reminding us of our possibilities. As the another interpreter of popular rituals, Mircea Eliade, has shown, when proffering or listening to a myth, one forgets his or her particular condition and is projected into another world that transcends any historical situation, any contextual limitation. One can take it off into the capacity of being human. And without drifting into any structuralist conceptions, it is a reminder, I think, of our shared humanity, and it is of great significance, all the more so, as I said, in our times that have been marked by a resurgence of intolerance and exclusionary ideologies. And the importance of respect in relation, I think, that stands behind the story as it is told. Another reason why the Tradition Archive is important to us is because it connects us to a version of culture that evades commodification. We are not on this planet solely to demonstrate endlessly our utilitarian purpose, but or can there be a price put in people being quiet for a moment as they listen to a story being told, or even more, a projection into the future of an exercise of the imagination that is enabled by a respect for tradition. And I think that alternative to commodification is probably very more important now than ever, in a time, as I said, without history, without context, and often an invitation to, if you like, to endless consumption. And it calls attention to a different meaning of creativity, a crohiacht, as we say in Irish, which goes far beyond innovation, which is making a change in what is. It is possible to bring into the world something entirely new, and it is important to be able to connect it to something that has gone before in tradition. And I think where our attention is asked for something that's both personal and intergenerational in kind. And that was a kind of creativity that is often drawn from hardship. For example, John Millington Synge's writing his diaries upstairs in the Aran Islands is a response to something. There is a faithfulness involved and a respect as well for, if you like, people's ability to rise above the circumstances that were placing limitations on their lives. So the Tradition Archive documents and celebrates that which at first glance might appear the stuff of the ordinary, born out of the mundane of everyday existence, but it actually belongs to the singular and the extraordinary of humanity's cultural diversity. And it invites us to extol that cultural diversity, to overcome the immediacy of any self-absorbing present in order to become aware of that which has gone before us, that to which human imagination has given so many unique expressions, and that which collective memory has made endure. Part of our optimism for the future is the possibility of what can in fact be reissued, or what can be brought into existence. And had those individuals who commenced the archive a century ago, if they had lacked the wisdom to see the immense value in their contemporary environment, we would not enjoy today what I've been looking at as sampling, the collective treasure that Ireland's national folklore collection is. Irish history, Irish music, Irish literature, all those spheres of achievement that are such an integral part of Ireland's cultural life and our international contribution. They would not be what they are if they had not had vision. And so we now rely on the foresight and discernment of those who are currently in charge of the collection, agus cuin gach ra agus banach dara, who are doing such an excellent job in continuing to expand it, Yelanu, deciding which of our contemporary customs, music or stories should be recorded most urgently in the archive. The foresight of our contemporary collectors was demonstrated, to mention but one example, by the 1979-1980 Urban Folklore Project. That project saw a team of collectors record over a 16-month period hours of audio and video material and compile a comprehensive photographic account of Dublin's social, commercial and cultural life. The collectors saw the value in that cultural hotpot from which came contemporary artists such as Roddy Doyle, U2 and Sinead O'Connor, and we should be grateful for them that. And I remember preparing to give the Littleton lecture on radio for RTE. The wonderful gathering of material, of memories of the 1913 lockout, which was incredibly important. Though so far from freezing the living tradition then, as someone might suggest, the archive makes it available to all those who are willing to draw from it and give it new life. And as this you know better than I, many historians, musicians, creative writers, media researchers and storytellers who turn to the National Folklore Collection can attest, the Tradition Archive remains profoundly relevant to us. That is why you have so many distinguished visitors present. It is a treasure we must cherish nationally, and one to which we must continue to make additions as a living archive. We must ask ourselves, how will our times be recalled by future generations? How will people describe our moments of hubris, our recovery to sanity, our responses to recession, our attempts at doing something new, our imagination, our battle for the freedom of imagination and for scholarship? So may I thank our host today, University College Dublin, Coláiste na Hillscoile Bláthlia, for holding in trust the National Folklore Collection, San Muinta na Héireann, on behalf of the Irish people. As President of Ireland, I want to express my gratitude to all the collectors, folklorists, ethnographers, linguists, toponymists, historians and archivists who have built and continue to build this wonderful collection. And I'm sure that all of you in your various fields will share, as I do, Ruth Benedict's remark about her own discipline when she said, "The purpose of anthropology is to make the world safe for human differences. May human differences flourish in respect." Garimila Maha Kikale.